Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. And boy, do we have a guest for you today. Stephen J. Cannell. Don't say Cannell.
That's right.
The guy is, down-to-earth kind of guy, rhymes with channel. He is the author of the best-selling series of crime adventure novels called the Shane Scully series. The newest one, which we're going to talk about today, is called On the Grind. On the Grind.
On the Grind.
What does that mean?
Well, it is a street term for your hustle. Your grind is your hustle. So if you're selling drugs on a corner, that corner is your grind.
That's
in this novel, it'll become clear what the grind is. One
of your more recent books in this series with an interesting title of Three-Shirt Deal was a New York Times bestseller?
Yeah, it was a New York Times bestseller. Well, a three-shirt deal is a triple murder. There was an old expression in the mafia days where they would say if they were going to kill a guy, they'd say, let's buy him a suit. And what that meant is they're either going to put a hole in his suit or they're going to buy him a suit for his coffin. and the street kind of equivalent of that is buy him a shirt, which means we're going to punch a hole in his shirt. So a
guy on the street can't afford a suit.
There you go. So the three-shirt deal is a triple murder.
Oh my God! Now you just don't write books. You're a big TV guy. Created or co-created more than 40 shows, scripted more than 450 episodes, produced or co-produced 1,500 episodes, and the hits include The Unforgettable Rockford Files, Greatest American Hero, A-Team, and so forth and so on. What of those TV exploits are you the proudest? When I read that whole thing down, I thought, well, some of that the guy's got to do because he's got to do. And then some of it must have captured you, and you were very excited.
Well, it's interesting. I never set out to do it because I got to do it. I always asked myself the following question. I always said, and this was my hypothetical question, 3 or 4 years from now, if we're lucky enough to still be on the air,
okay,
and if we don't have a script for next week, and my writing staff comes to me and says, Steve, you got to write me one over the weekend, would that make me really angry, or would I say, you know what, that'd be fun, I'd like to do that, and that really would strike to the depth of what I felt the idea could possess, and I made some shows that I wasn't as proud of, over the years, because when you make 40 shows, you're going to have some misses and some shows that don't come out straight. But each time I went into it trying to make the best damn television show I knew how to make, and you get your hits as you gather elements. When I gathered the element of Jim Garner in my script for the Rockford Files, I put a huge element into my machine there, because without him, that series would have been nothing, And certainly we had good writing, and we had a good supporting cast and good directors, and Mike Post's theme was great and all of that, the music. But Jimmy was the heart and soul of that show.
Lord, he was.
It's I used to write stuff occasionally that I would think, this is the best I can do this week, and we were always under time pressures. And I remember once I wrote a scene that I thought was just pretty informational and not very good, and I went to Daly's the day they shot it. Mm-hmm. And it was hysterical. Jim was finding moments in this scene. He was, he had that rubber face. He'd roll his eyes and do stuff. And the whole screening room was laughing. And at the end of Daily, and I knew the scene was mediocre, At the end of Dailies, they were slapping me on the back, going, "Good stuff," and I was going, "Well, of course, it's
Thank
me,
you,
It's like, but it was all Jim Garner,
You've also won a bunch of awards, and one that you won last year is called the 2008 Final Draft Hall of Fame Award, which recognizes entertainment industry luminaries, I guess that's you, who foster the art of screenwriting and nurture and inspire the creative process. What's that all about?
Well, the guys who developed the Final Draft software, which is pretty much standard software for computers, for screenwriting programs, were very interested in trying to get to foster new writers and get more people into the game. And I was too, and I got together with these guys, and we came up with an awards competition where everything would be, or we would submit, writers would submit screenplays. We had readers. I hired like 5 or 10 readers to read all these scripts, and then we would pick a winner. And I actually ended up shooting the first year's winner. It was a really funny script that starred Dennis Leary and Elizabeth Hurley, and we made it as a feature film. But it was from a writer who had never sold anything before. So it was my sort of attempt at giving back.
That must be a great feeling to be able to take something by somebody who's never had anything done before.
Yeah, and it was a great script. It was an excellent script.
Well, you know what? We're supposed to be talking about a book called On the Grind. And when we come back, we're going to get at that. Believe us.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
On the Grind is the title of the book. Perhaps more importantly, we should say it's a Shane Scully novel. The author, Stephen J. Cannell, is with us, and it is published by, and we didn't say this in the first segment, we're in trouble, published by St. Martin's Press. Maybe we should say it again. Published by St. Martin's Press.
Will say it in stereo.
One of the things that this book does, I started to read it, and I'm going on, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the most downer book about cops I've ever read. Every cop on every page is worse than the cop introduced on the page before. They are, they're crooks. They're potential killers. And then on page 77, you throw a complete surprise to us. And I have a feeling that people who are familiar with Shane Scully will not have been as surprised as I was. But I tell you, that was a great moment. I really loved that.
Well, it's funny because you don't want to be dishonest to your readers, and it's always great if you can flip a card somewhere at the end of Act 1 in a 3-act play, and you have, it changes all the the rules of the game, and that's what I knew that obviously when I carefully plot my novels before I write them. So the big trick in the first third of this book was to be honest with my reader while at the same time hiding a big piece of information. And
it was great.
Yeah, and I think I did it. But as I would read those things over, and then I have a friend who used to produce a lot of my TV shows, and he's been an excellent reader for me over the years, and I handed it to him, and I said, "Now I want you to keep me honest here. If there's any time where I'm lying to my reader, I want you to flag it for me, and
I didn't see no lie.
No.
I didn't see any lie at all. The essence of the plot is that Shane is thrown off the LAPD for what we might call malfeasance.
Yes, severe malfeasance.
Yes, severe malfeasance, and he's drummed out of the Corps. And since he doesn't know how to do anything else, he's got to try and find himself a job in another police department. And the police department, the only one that will take him in, is a police department in a place called Haven Park, which is 30 miles from L.A.
It's not even 30 miles. It's like 4 miles from downtown L.A. The way L.A. is constituted is when it first was incorporated, then these little cities started to sort of grow up around it. Some were farming communities. This was back in the early days, and they were little 1 square mile cities, and they're all over down there. Compton, Bell Gardens, they're millions of these little cities. And then L.A., as it continued to expanded around and basically enveloped these cities, which are right in downtown L.A. in the inner city of L.A., and they're incorporated cities with many of them are policed by the sergeants. By the sheriff's department. Mm-hmm. But some of them have their own private police departments, and the city of Haven Park, which is my fictitious city, has its own police department of 36 cops, all of them thrown off of departments for various crimes, including bad shootings, violence in interrogation rooms, beating up suspects.
A lovely group.
Just a bunch of total rats, and they're all on this department, and Shane ends up in this department and back in uniform in a squad car with a training officer named Alonzo Bell, who is an ex-LAPD guy who's thrown off that department for violence, and and it's his adventures in this town in the middle of L.A., which is like a third world country. It's like, and the corruption is actually fostered and run by the mayor, a man named Cecil Britano, a Hispanic American mayor who runs this city.
Who loves Frankie Valli.
And he's
not a completely bad guy.
He's a complete, he's an amazing guy, and Shane is caught up in this world of corruption. And
what the Haven Park Police Department and Haven Park itself is involved in is a lot of stuff bigger than a small city. Arms smuggling, heroin traffic, and illegal immigration. And that allows you to introduce into the mix something that is, I think, very, very important. The fact that other agencies are required in order to get this thing straightened out, to find out what's going on.
That's right. And the fact is that a lot of these cities in this area of Los Angeles are pipelines for narcotics, guns, and illegal immigration, because they are constituted inside their own jurisdictions, and a lot of the guns that are being brought in are being supplied to gangbangers, and they're MAC-10s and AR-15s and what have you, and so Homeland Security is obviously going to be very involved in that.
On the Grind, like all Stephen Cannell's writing, is based on extensive and intensive research, a fact that leads to some questions. And we're going to ask some of them when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. It is Conversations on the Coast. The title today, On the Grind. And just remember this, a Shane Scully novel by Stephen Cannell. And it's published by St. Martin's Press. And if you're a Shane Scully fan, that's all I have to say, is that here's a Shane Scully novel, and you'll run out and buy it. Now, if you're one of those slowpokes, kind of behind the curve, let me confess that I was behind the curve, and I totally recommend this book. This is a good one.
Thank you so much.
This is fun. It's upsetting in a way, which I want to get to. And one of the things about the book that pleases me is the strong female characters. Ophelia, Alexa, the Hispanic women characters. I really, really like that. And in the case of Ophelia and Alexa, these are women in major leadership roles in law enforcement.
Yeah. I've always liked to write strong women. It goes back to my days on the Rockford Files, where we used to do the Girl of the Week. And, of course, the Girl of the Week was always some girl who was scamming Rockford and taking him down for his car and all of his money and everything. Yeah. They weren't the females in distress. We didn't do that. We always wrote women who were more than his match, and that's where the fun of the series came in with it. So I like to write strong women, and Alexa, as you know, and as my readers know, and hopefully my about-to-be readers will come to find out,
can tell them,
is the head of the LAPD Detective Services Bureau, which basically is the detective division. So she's an acting head because she's only a lieutenant, but the chief really likes her management style, and so she's taking the captain's test, and then she'll be made the full-time head of the bureau. But she's basically Shane's boss. She's several levels above him. He's a homicide dick and homicide special, which is the elite homicide division of LAPD. But, when he goes off the road, it's kind of embarrassing for her because she is the head of the detective bureau, and if her husband isn't playing straight, then, So it creates great energy in the relationship. And one of the things I love about Shane is that he is not threatened by having a powerful woman who's actually his boss and being married to her. And their relationship at home is equally balanced, but at the office, she's in charge. She's got the bars. And
now let me interject here. The relationship at home is hot.
Yeah. They are.
There are some people out there who.
Yeah, they are very interested in one another.
Yeah.
But she's also the smartest cop he knows, and he'll often bust himself, because he's not always completely on the manual. And he'll come to her for advice on occasion, and she'll say, "Wait a minute, what are you doing again?" It's like, but he believes that he can get more straight information from her and more kind of understanding about how to do what he wants to do from her than anybody else. And so, it's a great relationship. And Ophelia Love in this novel is an FBI agent who's trying to stop the gun running that's coming into this little city. And which, when Shane ends up on the job down there in a totally corrupt apartment, finds himself at odds with her.
How close to possible reality is the situation in Haven Park?
Well,
in your opinion,
I everything I've written is fictitious, but I did read a bunch of articles in the L.A. Times about two cities down in this area who were involved in this sort of stuff, and that was sort of the ignition point for the idea for the book. But then everything from that point on became fiction, because I'm not writing documentaries here, and all my characters are my own and don't represent anybody that exists there. But the idea that there is corruption on these police departments, or that police officers are being hired that have been fired off of other departments for malfeasance of one kind or another, I find to be really interesting.
There's one very important character who is, you might say, the most virtuous character, Rocky Chacon.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was interesting that you have him in there.
Well, I have a strong belief that if you're going to have a Hispanic heavy, you better have a Hispanic hero. I don't want to, ever have my books look like they're political statements or anti-Hispanic or anti-Mexican or anything like that. And so, since I was dealing with a corrupt Mexican-American mayor, I created this character, Rocky Chacon, who is an ex-middleweight fighter who actually held the championship for about 6 seconds.
He reminded me of some fighter, and I can't remember who that is.
Well, like Roberto Duran or somebody like that,
all right.
who basically had all these ganas, and so he's very popular with the Mexican population. He decides to run for mayor and try and unseat this mayor.
It all comes down to a fantastic conclusion, one that'll take your breath away, and it is called On the Grind, a Shane Scully novel by Stephen Cannell. And this has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.